consistent with national security, what can you tell us about what you learned yesterday about the situation in Iran? Do you know anything different today than you did yesterday?
Yeah, some details, I think, in terms of what our response is. There clearly is a specific, incredible threat stream coming out of Iran at the very top. The IRGC Quds Force general has issued, basically proclaimed that his proxies prepare for war. That's what we're responding to. But I think it's important to note that there's been a lot of comments that we're going to war with Iran. That's farthest thing from the truth. This is more of a defensive, sort of deterrent posture and policy that we're engaged in, a showing of force to Iran that they better not get aggressive and hit our allies, which they have done. I mean, David, they hit 4 tankers in the Persian Gulf. They came a mile away from our embassy with a rocket, and we have to take that seriously.
Well, exactly. That was my question. It was going to be in part, to what extent is this protecting U.S. interests and U.S. assets as opposed to things like Saudi Arabia and, for that matter, Israel?
Well, I think it's, protecting our allies in the region like Israel, like Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, and making sure that the commerce out of the Gulf can go in and out without disruption, to protect our military forces who are there. And, I think one thing is clear: if our military is attacked by Iran, we have a right to self-defense, and there will be a full retaliatory response that will be a very forceful one.
The reason we got here, I think it's fair to say, is President Trump decided that the JCPOA, that agreement that was done with Iran to try to deter the development of nuclear weapons, was not good. He walked away from it. The goal was to bring the Iranians back to the bargaining table. Is there any reason to believe that they're any closer to having that negotiation?
Well, the Secretary did put 12 diplomatic points on the table, and I think that's I'm glad you raised that point, David, because this really demonstrates the sanctions are having an impact on Iran. It is crippling Hezbollah. They're starved for cash. It is starting to cripple their terror operations. And as I see this, it's really an act of desperation on the part of Iran to even threaten our military and our allies, and also really threaten Europe that if they don't abide by the agreement in 60 days, that they're going to ramp up their nuclear production facility. And we know they quadrupled their enrichment capability just the other day.
So Congressman, my understanding of what the criticism was from President Trump of the original agreement was it didn't go far enough, didn't deal with ballistic missiles, didn't deal with Hezbollah and other supporting of terrorism in the region. But given where we are right now, are we safer today because we walked away from that agreement? Because it doesn't feel that way.
Well, I think Iran is in a far worse position today because we did pull out of the agreement. I'm not opposed to an international agreement with Iran. I think it's just this was not a very good deal. I was opposed to it when it was initially presented to the Congress because, for many reasons, it didn't deal with the terrorism issue, didn't deal with the intercontinental ballistic missile issue, and it didn't deal with full inspection by the IAEA. For instance, they cannot inspect military sites. That's precisely where they're going to be carrying out these nuclear facilities.
So finally, Congressman, what do we know about Iran's ability to go around some of the sanctions? I mean, I'm mindful of the fact that Huawei is in the news almost every day. The chief financial officer is actually under guard up in Canada, ostensibly in part because Huawei was helping them go around, the Iranians go around the sanctions. Do we know the extent to which those sanctions have holes in them?
Yeah, I think they have been violated. Let me just say something about Huawei. As a former federal prosecutor as well, this whole 5G capability that Huawei has are really tentacles of China. They're in probably 60% of global markets now are trying to get in that. Once they get into these markets with 5G technology capability, they own that data. So it's very much a big national security risk. I think the president made the right decision to basically ban Huawei from putting 5G down into the United States. I would urge any of our allies, particularly our Five Eyes intelligence allies, not to engage with Huawei because of the national security threat. They've been stealing our intellectual property and espionage cases, tech transfers for decades, and they've gotten away with it. And we finally have somebody that will stand up to them and say no more.